Alright, top round.
I don't want to be in your video.
Okay, to figure out roasted steaks, you're gonna flip it over. So your part that starts breaking up over here, that's gonna be your end where your roast is. Your smooth part on the other side will be the part where you're gonna be cutting steaks. Some of this I like to just kind of trim off a little bit so that it doesn't slide around as much. Alright, so roast on this side, steaks on this side. Flip it back over. And we're just going to cut a little bit of this extra fat off the end here. Alright. Your first couple will always be the smaller ones. And this one we're just going to keep cutting straight across. By doing it this way, you should have between 8 and 10 steaks. 2, 3 maybe roast, all depending on the time of year and what you need to fill your shelf. So with that one, I've got 6 right now. Was 7 and this will be 8. These look like really big steaks, but once you trim them down, they're not bad. There's not a whole lot of trim, but there is some. So in this last one here, you can start to see a vein that runs through that. That's going to be my last steak. If I keep going, I'm just going to get more of that and more that I need to trim off. Or I can just stop where I'm at right now for steaks and cut some of this into roast all this excess up here. This is stuff that you're going to want to try to trim off, but keep it because you can always trim it out and use it for stew meat. I want one thicker roast that's all the way across. And that I'll go back and trim. Now this one for the end piece, I try to trim off some of this excess fat here first before I actually cut it into to roast, just because there is so much of this excess on here that you're going to trim off. If you trim it, or if you cut it right now, you aren't going to see two roasts that are about the same size. Try not to go too far in, but there is a thick muscle that runs across this top here that you want to get off. Just appearance wise, it doesn't look very good, therefore it usually doesn't sell very good. A lot of times if you're doing this, you can pull that fat back a little bit and you can kind of see where it separates from the meat and follow that line down. I had a little bit left on there, that's not bad though. Flip it over to the bottom side. This is going to be your ugly side to kind of trim off. That bigger chunk there, we can pretty much just push most of that off with our finger. But we're going to just finish trimming that. This thicker muscle in here is what you're going to want to try to trim off. Kind of anything that's a little bit loose. You're pretty much just looking for appearance wise to make sure this looks good, because if it doesn't look good, it's not going to sell. Regardless of where you're at, whether you're at Walmart, your local store, if you've got something that doesn't look appetizing, it's going to sit there. But at the same time, you got to kind of watch, because you don't want to be trimming off good meat in there. Got one more little piece here that we're just going to follow this down. I call it like a silver lining type of thing, same deal as you got on the back of baby back ribs. So yes, there is some excess fat on there yet, but that's not bad. This side over here, we have one bigger chunk that kind of weaves in though, so you got to kind of watch where you trim that. But we do have one bigger chunk that's sticking out there. Call that good for trim. We have our one bigger roast already, so this one we're just going to cut straight in half now. So this would be my roast number 2 and 3. Set that aside. Go back and trim off this other roast a little bit. Not a whole lot in there. This one we're going to leave whole for your one bigger roast. this skin in there, it's not bad. It's not discolored. It looks a little chunky, but not bad. So we're gonna leave it. On the end here, we have another bigger chunk. Trim off. That's that top part. We're gonna leave that. Looking all the way around, looks pretty good. So we're gonna leave it just like it is. That'll be your one bigger roast. Go back and trim steaks. So this was my very end one. This is where I have that vein that runs through there. If you can, try to cut it out, but on my other side, you can see a little bit of it, but not much. So we're just gonna leave that. If you need extra stew meat, you can go ahead and trim this top piece off here. Or if you do not need extra stew meat, then you can leave it on and trim your excess fat on the outside. But we're gonna use it for some extra stew meat. So we'll come back and do that. Your extra piece on the very top here, there's a divider line there. You're gonna wanna trim that off just a little bit. Every top round has a spot where that meat is a little tiny bit discolored. That's what you're gonna wanna trim off. It's not very much. That's another piece that you can trim off if you need to throw in your stew meat. Even this back piece here, you can leave that on. Otherwise, we call this one a steak. Same thing with the rest of these. If you need that top strip, go ahead and trim it off for stew meat. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot of trimming on it. There's a natural kind of casing in there that, or border, whatever you want to call it. So that'd be in your keep pile. Little tiny bit down there. This little bit in here is fine. So that would be trim from one. Not a whole lot. Just an extra piece here. Keep pile. There's not much left on that one, so that we're going to pitch in the garbage. Now we're starting to get so that little top piece on there is not very much in there. You can keep it to trim it out if you want to. Not going to get a whole lot out of it. So I'm just where this fat is here. It's going to go like that. Garbage. This other piece on the top is a bigger chunk yet. That we can keep. Even your bottom here, there's not enough to trim off and worry about. Keep. Garbage pile. Stew meat. Garbage. Getting down here to my last two. Even my bottom here, I'm not going to worry about. This is kind of my first cut, but I needed extra stew meat, so instead of trying to trim this all off and make it a steak, we're going to trim this excess off and do stew meat. The only thing with stew meat is you want to try to get pieces that are similar in size. Go back through all of this here. Stew meat usually ends up in about 1 pound packages. It's kind of the general rule of thumb. This was that little top piece that we cut off. got all of our stew meat, 7 steak, and 3 roast.